My name's Chris. I am working on Console.xyz. It's a secure, decentralized Web3 chat platform.
Awesome. So I'm Harsh. We are essentially building a project called Ethereum Push Notification Service. It's essentially a decentralized communication protocol for entire Web3. Allows notifications directly to wallet address and more.
Hey all, how you doing? My name's Zaven. I worked at Facebook for 10 years in engineering leadership, working mostly on the social impact space, trying to use technology for a force of good. Now I'm working on a social media platform called Niche. It's a mobile app that lets people connect over shared identity, interests, and we never have ads, and basically just taking my learnings from working at Facebook to build a healthier, just overall better social media platform.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna do hard questions first. So why do we need to build this on crypto rails, right? We've seen Facebook, Instagram sort of adopt like NFTs into their platforms. We've got YouTube monetization. What's that kind of killer feature of Web3 that we really need to do build crypto-based social media from the grounds up? Stani, I'm gonna kick that one to you first.
Yeah, hey everyone. So I think there's multiple aspects to let's say how blockchain can benefit the users and the creators and also the contributors in the space. And I think kind of like one of the interesting part is that when you look back into the history of what and how social media was created, and with Web 2, actually social media and the platforms, they effectively created a very seamless way to connect with peers across globally, distribute information, and actually interact with content. And then you have different kinds of forms of related to video content, text, and audio as well, or maybe combinations. One of the interesting things is that many of the users that are using today Web2 social are effectively creating a lot of the content. So we have the concept of user-generated content, where you as a creator, you're actually creating that liquidity. Maybe it's videos or text, and giving those data points to the platform. And because you create your follower base within the platform, you effectively create this kind of like a network effect within the application, and you can't move your followers out of that network to somewhere else. So there's this one question about ownership. So effectively then when you have your own social media profile that might be, for example, on chain, and you have your relationship with other peers, you actually have that access to your access to ownership of your own social graph. And it changes the dynamics on how, for example, we are building social media applications today, but also the dynamics between the users and the platforms. Because now when the users are actually the epicenter and they own their own networks, the applications actually have to build value towards the users and actually build algorithms where users have more flexibility. And with the ownership also, we have this concept of actually being able to monetize directly through your social graph. So when you are actually creating content, you could monetize directly with your content to your audience directly, because it happens on that Web3 social graph level. So it's more about actually empowering the users and the creators, but at the same time, it lowers the barrier for developers to come and build those new social experiences when they don't need to necessarily rely on creating a complete new network, but they can use an existing social graph that is available to anyone. And then the users have actually the last saying on which of these applications they're most aligned to, or algorithms, and use those that serve them the most. So there's like three components that it helps developers, the creators, and empowers their creativity and monetization, and the end users to actually have the choice what they want to use without locking them into a specific platform.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think owning the social graph is a huge improvement for Web3 because what Stani's doing with Lens, I imagine could be incorporated into projects that were on stage and people in the audience can build. Like to pull that in is amazing. I think what we're doing with Console, think of Console as like Web3 Discord alternative. The first step, even before the social graph, we believe is, or part of it, is identity. And so you asked what should be decentralized, and identity needs to be that first step, that onboarding, so that you own your own private keys, and so that you own your identity and your data and your push notifications and every piece of social content that you create thereafter. So that's where we're starting and progressively going to move forward from there. Yeah.
Yep. I actually agree with both of you guys. I think identity and social media also social graph is really important. But what's also important in crypto rails is to build this communication layer or Web3 communication stack, using which social networks or Discord or anything else can operate. Like just think about it. Whenever we are doing something on Web2, we are doing it through notifications. Like all social media happens through notifications, like Twitter, Telegram, whatever. And that is the experience that we are focusing on. Like communications, all form of communications, but notification, because that's like the primitive thing that empowers things like Lens and things like Discord and something else. I mean, crypto rails, like social media definitely needs to be there. Users are social by their nature. And that's what Lens is doing, and they're doing fantastic job at it because, of course, Stani. And notifications come in because, users, they want adoption and they want the same UX as Web2. And that's where notification and all forms of communication fits in.
Yeah, these are great answers. I don't have too much more to add that hasn't been said already. The one thing I will say too, the nice thing about Web3 is there's this financial layer that is like very closely baked into the social layer that we're all building. And what that allows is a more seamless way to monetize the content, whether it's buying and selling digital assets or whatever. And so that allows people to free themselves from this ad-based model that has caused all sorts of problems down the line.
Zaven, you're kind of building this social network, right? So how do you think this open social graph, I know your product doesn't specifically have it, but how do you think this changes sort of the competitive dynamics of building social applications, right? And do you consider this as your product decisions and stuff like this, and user acquisition and retention? Kind of how do you think about the openness and relating that back to your product decisions, I guess?
Yeah, I think openness is a really good thing. I think we should build an ecosystem, a multi-chain ecosystem that leads to lots of other social apps existing. I think this consolidation that we saw with Facebook and Instagram has been really bad for people because, honestly, a couple of reasons. First of all, it makes it really easy for problematic content to be shared and to spread virally because every person is connected to every other person through 6 degrees of separation, and most of the interaction is happening publicly, right? And so someone posts a piece of misinformation, it gets shared, it gets shared, it gets shared, and now a couple of million people have seen it. And so breaking that up and giving people the choice over their networks and the choice over their communities, you might have one app that's more focused on a certain type of discourse, you might have a different app that's more media centered, a place you go to chat, a place you go to watch videos, a place you go to buy NFTs. I think these are ultimately good for the consumer because it allows them to choose what sort of content they want and what sort of experience that they want. And in general, I feel like having this platform or having these protocols allows other apps to exist, which then sort of lifts up the whole ecosystem. Because if it's one person or one company going against Facebook or Meta, it's a much harder battle than if you have all these different things that sort of normalize, right, and make it more more common to think of social networking as a decentralized experience. So I think we're all helping each other here.
I'll just add to that. I think we have a history of that with the open source movement, and you've seen any time, whether it was like Movable Type in 2005 being the centralized blogging system, trying to go after now like WordPress or any kind of open source project tends to win. And to me, Web3 is the open source movement for social. So.
Well said.
So do you see the openness being that killer feature? Do you think that users actually really honestly care about that? Like, do they want that algorithm that's like a little bit more altruistic or whatever you want to call it, right? Or do you think, Stani, you alluded to a lot of this is the financialization, right? The kind of like how users can earn more money from their content. Do you see the financialization actually being the killer feature of decentralized social, or is it more of those altruistic things and of like, call it like a better for society type of content?
Yeah, I think in general, kind of like users at the current state, they don't have really choice. What kind of an algorithm or experience they can subscribe in one particular platform or a network, and that is a big challenge because as a user, you simply need to use whichever algorithms might work well for bigger social media platforms. For example, in Twitter, even if you create a better discovery algorithm for your users, and it might actually generate less revenue, maybe that algorithm doesn't go into production for those kind of reasons. And I think like users in general, there's some expectations. So I would say that creating Web3 social media applications where the experience doesn't reflect what we have in Web2, that will be definitely something that is hard to migrate users or even hard to create new applications and get adoption because the very base standard is that many of these Web3 social applications, they really need to have at least the base similar experience that is expected in traditional web applications. And for example, that you don't need to, for example, pay for gas, you don't need to sign for MetaMask transactions, and also figuring out how you actually can onboard users without all the hassle with what you see with the wallet infrastructure today. So there's definitely like expectations that are we need to meet to be in par with the current experience. But once you actually give that choice to the user, so you actually can move your graph, or let's say that you can actually explore your graph through another algorithm or to another experience. I think that is the point and key moment where users start actually reactivating their mindset again. That now you actually can choose something that really is reflecting your values, whether it's the content that it's showing or reflecting the curation that you really want to see. So if you want better discovery or maybe some more relevant music discovery, or using various different machine learning algorithms that actually serve you better, take into context your Web3 Web3 data footprints, you can actually you have that freedom actually to do. Once you have the freedom, then we will see more ideas coming. And I think that's something that I saw in decentralized finance as well, that when you are building open ecosystem where anyone can actually take your code base, configure the protocol and deploy, the users will you will see more innovation, first of all, but also you will see more demand and alignment for the users, and they choose actually not only the products, but the communities itself. So there will be a community behind of every product, and you want to have alignment as well with that particular community. And I think what was mentioned about the financial layer, I think that's extremely exciting, because effectively that means that first time you have as a creator actually a way to directly monetize through your social graph, and everything that you create as content can actually be an asset class and collectible. And I think that's where we will see kind of like a new ways of monetizing. And because it's an open social graph, it also means that we will see probably other interesting things in terms of the monetization and the financial layer as well. So there's a lot of components that can actually empower the users and be attractive, but the experience just needs to be like at least to the expectations that we have today in traditional social media applications.
Got it. Just to build on this, like open source I think it enables 4 things, like Stani said, innovation. Like for the first time, anyone can go ahead and build on top of the protocol and do things what they want to do. We saw that happening with DeFi. We'll definitely see it happening with social and communication. The next thing it enables is governance. Like, just think about it. Why should a centralized social network control our identity? Social network or Web3 social network enables governance by the people for the people. If we vote and we like democracy, then of course we need to like Web3, right? The other thing is it also enables reputation. So we spoke briefly about things like a person can go ahead and talk, and we don't know what the person identity is. But with Web3, we can prove that this person was present or this person had a reputation, and that carries forward. And of course, monetization. Like now, for the first time, users, they get the monetization part. So of course, we got these 4 things figured out. The only thing that we are working towards, of course, as Stani said, is adoption. And adoption comes by solving or making this technological innovation frictionless. And that's what we are seeing right now with communication, transactions, and so on.
Yeah, I totally agree that getting to that user adoption, I think, is where that next question is. So what do you think is really missing? Is it like kind of, the infrastructure layer? I think, Stani building Lens on Polygon, I think that hit roughly 2 million daily active users. Like, to get to a real social network, we got to be larger than that. So like, what, from your guys' perspective, what do you guys think is truly missing? Is it maybe just a key feature, or is it base layer scalability, or is it just a function of time? Do we just need to build this stuff out over the next couple of months? So, Chris, what do you think?
Time.
Time?
I mean, I think we spent so much time working on the infrastructure layer. With Console, we're really just interested in the app layer. I think people should be able to use Web3 apps and not have to know even what chain it's on. I mean, we're multi-chain, but it shouldn't even matter. It should just be a really seamless experience. And I think we're there. I think this next year is going to be the year of the apps, the year of identity, the year of social, owning your social graph. I think this is all, I think this is a really interesting place to be here today. Yeah.
Got it. So time, definitely. Communication. I mean, as he said, like everything that happens on Web 2 happens through communication. Service communicates to each other. When we are chatting on Telegram or Twitter, we are not chatting. We are doing this via notifications. So a lot of information or enabling services to reach out to their users is what we need to bring this adoption forward. Like, technology needs to be invisible. A user will only come to Web3 when we provide them the UX of Web2, which EPNS is trying to build with the entire communication stack across all Web3. But other than that, we also need to make sure that the users are able to see the benefits of Web3. So make UX make UX as seamless as Web2. And then on top of that, provide them with monetization, provide them with governance, provide them with composability. Kind of like how Web1 is history now, because Web2 provided so many other things. And that's what Web3 is doing. And I think we are getting better at it.
I would even take that a step further and say our UX has to be better than Web 2, unfortunately, because most people don't really care about the technology. They don't understand the technology. What they care about is, what is the value I'm getting out of this? What is the content? What is the community? How does this app make me feel? And so, like you all are saying, the barrier to entry is actually pretty remarkably high into doing this, because if you have a social app that's coming out in the year 2022, you need a feed, you need messaging, you need notifications, you need search, a bunch of things, right? And so all of that has to work seamlessly to people's expectations, because they're just comparing it to what they're used to using. They're comparing it to Instagram and TikTok, which have literally thousands of people developing this. And so it needs to provide so much value. And so that's why I think time is a big part of this, and then also just the communities and the content. And just to show niche a little bit, a part of why we actually decided to go in this direction is because it's easier to break that if you start with small communities. And so the network effects aren't as strong. If you have 100 people who all have something really, really in common, right? Like, let's say they're all Web3 founders in Brooklyn. It's easier to get started that way, because 100 people with that demographic actually provides them enough of a network that they get something out of the app. And so it's just about slowly over time building up all those features, getting the right people together, and then hopefully letting it all snowball from there.
So I guess, big challenges do you see in getting from here to there? Like, I think one to me is just like the mobile experience. So like, we've talked a lot about the basic financialization, selling user-generated content, all this kind of stuff, and like, you can see a natural friction right there with the Apple, Google oligopoly, where they can take the 20, 30% cut that they're taking. So how do you guys, from a building perspective, like kind of either getting around this or kind of offering a user experience kind of within those rules, or even just, hey, screw it, we're going to do our own thing, right? Chris, what do you kind of think?
What can you? I'm not sure I understand the question.
So, delivering that mobile experience so that you have with a traditional, let's say, TikTok. And if we've got, as I say, one of the key features is selling your NFTs or financialize, a lot of what Stani talked about was selling user-generated content. How do you do that within the confines of Apple without paying kind of their take rate that they've got going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, our app is going to be, we're launching on mobile, iPhone, Android at the end of the year, and it's going to be completely you own your own private keys, like wallet login. So we're doing what Signal does to have, like, you can scan a QR code and you get that, and you can basically import all that data. To be curious, like, I mean, we were checking out Niche over lunch before this, and it's basically like TikTok built on a blockchain protocol, and it's super cool. And I think once you can start using those experiences, people also go where the people are. And so I think all of what we're building here can definitely be brought onto the phone, but the key change is we'll own, the users will own their own data. Yep. And I think from there that there'll just be new ways to monetize it I just think we just probably haven't seen it yet. I don't actually know the answer to that, but I think there's it's going to be an interesting next 2 years.
It's a complicated question, Dustin. But yeah, I think mobile, of course, we need to do that. As I said, or as Zaven said, the UI needs to surpass Web 2, along with all the features, which means that mobile needs to be done. Of course, with protocol level, there are a few challenges. Like when you are just building the protocol, you want users to or developers to come and build on top. But yeah, we are also focused on mobile and Zaven, TikTok.
Yeah, true. One thing that I'm excited about, this is like tangentially related, but it reminded me of this, is the portability of data. Like being able to, go from one app to another, and all your messages are there because you own your keys. Or, you go to this other app and you plug it in and sees all the NFTs or interest you've collected, right? I don't know how that's going to introduce new monetization models, but I bet it will, and I bet it's going to be really, really cool.
I like that.
Stani, do you have any thoughts on, I guess, what is that killer feature? I mean, we've talked a lot about whether it's just the financialization, but like if you just had to name one that like says like, let's say the mainstream media picks up and says like, holy cow, decentralized social's here, and it's basically because of this reason. What do you think that number one reason is?
Previously we've seen a lot of effort to actually like recreate the Web2 social into a Web3 infrastructure. So like we've seen efforts to kind of like create decentralized Twitter and getting like similar applications to feature parity and competing against existing social media networks. And I think that's going to be very hard because the network effects there are quite strong, and the users can't actually port away from there easily. So I think it's more about creating kind of like a new interest graphs, what was mentioned also previously, that you have certain type of group that actually is interesting in a topic, and actually from there you could actually scale to slowly to a bigger audience. And also I think one important thing is to figure the kind of like an experience that how you are interacting with the content in a new way. I think there is sort of interesting progression in the Q social as well. So we see with the Reel, for example, that it's a new interesting way to interact with the content and your peers. But then you can also think about whether it's going to be a smaller thing, a feature, or could you actually grow a network out of it? So like building social is equally hard in Web 2 and Web 3. I think even harder in Web 3 because you have to build that equally good or even better user experience. But as long as we can make the threshold very low, so for example, whatever has been built already, it still exists as a social graph, and you might have a developer any part of the world just building a new experience and actually inviting all the users from an existing social graph. That's going to be a big bootstrapping mechanism for innovation and Web3 social.
What's your killer feature, Chris?
So I think one interesting question for the audience or anybody listening is to maybe study our behavior the past 2 years and what have been some of the killer apps in Web3. Yeah. And I'm always surprised, I know you all are going to hate me for this, but when people use Telegram, they're like, add me on Telegram. Because from my perspective as a developer, Telegram is not private, it's not secure, it's not very open, it is somewhat open source, but it's not Web3, right? So why do we all go to Telegram, right? I actually think there's two value propositions that they're killing and that we don't appreciate. And one, I would say, is on Telegram, you have your own handle, right? So I think people actually appreciate not giving out their phone number and not giving out maybe their private information for Signal or WhatsApp. I think we actually appreciate synonymity more. And I think the blockchain, when we look at Lens, when we look at EPNS, when we look at Niche and everything, like having your own private keys, I think we subconsciously appreciate that more, and there's a huge opportunity. So to me, owning your own identity is like the #1 thing that's going to help bring like attention to all of this and all the apps we build. And the second thing I would say that Telegram does really well is it's also where all the people are. And so I think if anyone, like the open source movement, like if we could get all the people using Lens, and like every app that uses Lens is going to be that much better. So I think those two things could really like just unlock a ton of doors over the next few years.
I like that. Real quick.
That's really, really well put. I think communication will be the key factor for Web3. That's actually building to your question, like why do we use Telegram? Because we didn't had an alternative. We didn't had a way to talk to wallets. We didn't had a way to notify wallets, or even video stream to wallets. So those are the killer features that will define Web3, or at least bring it part to Web2, so that innovations of Web3 could really, really shine.
I know we're almost out of time, so I'll be brief with my story. But I was demoing Niche a couple of days ago to one of the co-founders of Near, which is the protocol that we're building on. And so, he signed up, he scanned the QR code, he joined some clubs, and so we automatically mint NFTs as like little membership tokens for those clubs. And of course, him being very skeptical and very technical, he connected his Near wallet directly. And then as soon as he signed up, he went actually to the Explorer in a different browser and checked that he really had those NFTs. And so he pulled this up, and in there he had these membership cards that we designed. And so this is something that existed within our app moments earlier, but now had bled out into a different world, right? He was seeing it from his browser, this thing that we designed with our logo on it. And that to me was that moment of like, oh wait, this is actually decentralized. Like this isn't just in one platform, this isn't the walled garden, but it's actually allowing your identity to go to these other apps and other websites. And so for me, that was the sort of like lightbulb moment of like, okay, like this is actually what we're doing.
I like that. That's a good spot to end it. So appreciate it, guys, and thank you for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.